everybody. Hello. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for having me. It's such a privilege to come to this community and to be a part of your Hanukkah celebrations and the dinner tonight. And I will get back to this, but particularly I feel warm in this community because it was the Jewish community that first funded this campaign and supported this campaign. And I remember at the time that happened, realising the extent to which the Jewish community had supported, funded, attended and protested in relation to the refugee issue in Australia for a very long time, which I think someone should write something about that, because I think it's a beautiful story of solidarity and support from a more established community to a newly arrived one. So I think that's beautiful. One of you must write it, please. That's the only thing that comes out of tonight. But first an introduction. So as was pointed out, I am the Human Rights Campaign Director at Get Up. But this story actually comes from a place of no sleeping while I was on maternity leave. So obviously for those of you who have been on maternity leave or had a small child, you'll notice they don't do much sleeping. And so I was awake at 2 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, you have the internet now, so when it's 2 o'clock in the morning and you're not sleeping, you can go on Google. And so at the time, the Human Rights Commission was doing its interviews in relation to the Forgotten Children report, the report on children in detention. So of course I had a young baby in my arms and I wasn't sleeping, so I was probably a bit tired and emotional. And it really struck me listening to those stories of children self-harming and the predictable abuse and the terror and the fear and the tiredness of their parents who would come seeking safety to this country who were instead met with our fences. That the Maribyrnong Detention Centre, where some of these children were being held, was a mere 15 minutes drive down the road from me. And I really sat there and went, it's 15 minutes down the road from me, and those fences are still standing. And I'm here, and how on earth will I ever justify this to this child, should they ever ask? How they are 15 minutes down the road from me and the fences are still standing, and I have a Human Rights Commission with an impenetrable thousands of word report telling me in excruciating detail what's happening. And I think at that point I started Googling, what is the situation here? And I realised, when you look at the polls, as I did, that our country is riven in half to some degree, or in quarters. 25% of the nation currently probably agrees with most of this room, that what's happening in detention centres and our response to people who come fleeing harm is horrendous and in contravention of human rights. That's 25% of the country. Conversely, 25% of the country, when asked what should we do with people who arrive by boat, literally say sink the boats, push them back, sink them. We're not being hard enough. And a full half of the country sits squarely in the middle in support of the current policy. So in support of turning boats back, in support of indefinite detention, in support of detention of children. And when one looks at those figures, as I did when one is tired and emotional, you start to think, we have a situation now, 15 years of protests and reports, and that Human Rights Commission report, fantastic though it was, is almost an identical replica of a report published literally a decade earlier, which said the same thing and ended with saying, I hope that this means that Australia will never do this again. And we read it a year later, 10 years later, and we're doing the same thing. So in that context, when you look at those figures, the feeling is of defeat. You know, we have failed to convince the vast majority of people of these people's humanity. We have failed to convince our body politic and our bipartisan majority parties that what we are doing is completely immoral, and we are unnecessarily and expensively harming a tiny cohort of people compared to what the rest of the world deals with. So when you look at that, you ask yourself the question, when you're faced with gross human rights abuses of the kind that we are, when the indefinite detention of children, the predictable harm that we're causing people in detention, and you have failed to convince people of your viewpoint, where does that leave one? Do we just keep trying to convince? What happens if we have a humanitarian crisis, as we do, and people literally 15 minutes down the road from me? What does one do? Rip down the fences with one's bare hands? Understandable. Effective? Probably not. And post-Caesarean, I certainly wasn't going to get very far running up those fences. And besides, I tried that 10 years before and probably got a conviction on. I don't even think I got a conviction, but anyway, I wasn't successful, as clearly outlined. So I think the question then came to a few of us when we started discussing this, actually in my mother's group. What can we do? And I think in that question, as activists or as people that are concerned with human rights abuses, as people that understand that the sanction of the state or the support of the majority of people does not necessarily make it right. I think in that context, one has to think cleverly and strategically about how this system is supported. And when we looked at that, we realised that you can see detention and immigration detention in this country as a chair, well, a three-legged stool. And one of those legs is the public support, unquestionably. One of those legs is the government support. But the other leg that we have consistently, to some degree, as activists, disregarded, is the support of the corporations that run the detention centres and have done so for 15 years and haven't just run them but have made an eye-watering profit. Currently, the company that runs the offshore detention centres has been paid $1.4 million a day on average since 2012. So when you realise this situation, you realise not only does one company or two companies, maybe 3 or 4, provide services to the detention centres, but banks lend to those companies. Those companies provide security at our local synagogue, our church, our swimming pool, our school. Those companies provide services to our universities. All of us who work have compulsory superannuation. Where does that go? To these companies. And when we realised that situation, genuinely in a mother's group, in between the nappies, we realised we were sitting atop a campaign. Because for so long we had focused on government, for so long we had focused on changing hearts and minds, all of which is important, but sitting right in front of us was an opportunity around the companies, an opportunity to realise that the network of money that kept detention in business is large, but we are at the centre of it. And as activists, that provides us an extraordinary opportunity. So that's what we did. And that's when the support of the Jewish community came in. Because at that point, we were a bunch of mothers in on maternity leave. We started talking to some of the corporations, some of the super funds in our spare time. I took along my children to most of the meetings. At one point my son threw up on the shoes of a CEO, but they wiped it off and we continued. To some degree it was easier to talk about children in detention when one had a genuine child with you. But we started, and at that point, when we had those conversations, sometimes at the highest echelons, and you realise that there still was a group of people that A, could be convinced, B, we were convincing, and C, once you had convinced somebody of the genuine abuse, you converted them essentially, that this was potential. And at that point, we decided that this wasn't something that we could do in our spare time anymore, and we probably needed a campaign. And that's when the support of the Jewish community came in and of various other individuals. Because what we faced at that point, though, was the fear of the NGO sector. It was a sector that had been brutalised, it had had its funding cut, and it was afraid of corporations. Because in some ways, this seemed like a fantastic strategic opportunity, and in others it seemed completely ludicrous. I mean, as if the government wasn't enough of a threat. We wanted to take on corporate Australia at the same time. And so the NGO community was genuinely scared, and we had masses of support from individuals, but all of the institutional bodies of the non-government organisation community, which at the time I belonged to, I had a job at Oxfam, were all in a position where they couldn't support the campaign. They were worried about the legal threat, and they were worried about the potential for government funding completely drying up in a vindictive manner, which probably was accurate, I'd say. And it was a fear I really understood. So at that point, we got a tiny amount of funding and we started writing a report, and we thought, we're just going to keep going. We've got a little bit of funding, we can make it work. We literally had a WhatsApp group, and we relied on people not sleeping because their kids weren't, so they would write chapters of the report overnight. And at that point, we were just working completely behind the scenes. So by this point, it's gone from November to July this year. And then we started having some really good discussions with superannuation funds. And then they overtook us. It got to the point where HESTA, the Health Super Fund, and a variety of others pulled out $28 million from the stock of Transfield, which was the company that ran the offshore detention centre. I honestly almost couldn't believe it at some point, because I remember talking to people and they said, you will never ever get any institution in this country in the context of bipartisan support for this policy to ever show their nose above the parapet. And you did. You had the Health Super Fund. And after that, it was like the ball rolling. At this point, we still weren't public, because we had had all these discussions privately. There were lots of other people at this point starting to talk up about this. We were still private. I didn't have a business card. And at that point, the company realised what we were up to some degree. I mean, we had one or two discussions with them, but I think at that point, when $28 million were pulled from their stock, they realised the threat that these quiet conversations had posed. And so they released a document to the market that talked all about this organisation, no business and abuse, and the naughty things we were saying about human rights abuses and how they were completely unfounded, despite the fact that, you know, the amount of printing we have to do of all of the reports about human rights abuses, I literally couldn't fit it in my car, and I had a relatively big car that usually had 2 cranks in it. So at this point, we decided to go public. And we launched with a major campaign with the wonderful support of GetUp, which has been fantastic. And in a week, we had raised $150,000 from the community, and 40,000 people had signed on to the campaign, which was just incredible. For after so long doing this behind the scenes with a small collective of people working at all hours on this foolhardy campaign that was totally going to get us sued. To have that many people come in support, and I think many of you in the room are hopefully on our list, was incredible. And at that point, I think that was when things really changed, because, you know, we'd had these arguments behind closed doors about the extent to which we would get support. And we know that we only have 25% of the population. So there's an extent to which your bluff doesn't really work about huge cohorts of people, and it's going to prove, you know, disastrous to your corporate profile and your reputation. And to have those people join up, I think, really tipped the balance. And at that point, we achieved, and the whole community achieved, what we never thought possible. A year ago, offshore detention looked completely unbreakable. It was an absolutely golden goose if you wanted to make money. It had bipartisan support that wasn't going to shift at all. And there was no way this entire system, which had 2,000 desperate, traumatised, abused people at the centre of it, that had been in detention for 2 or 3 years on average, was going to shake. And the contract for the next 5 years was due to be signed in September. And it literally ticked down, and I sat there, and our team sat there waiting every day with press release about when it was signed, saying this is horrible, and the press release never got sent because they didn't sign the 5-year contract, and they still have not signed the 5-year contract. They still haven't, because what's happened is this community has come together and said, you do this, we will pull our schools, we will pull our universities, we will pull our churches, our synagogues, everywhere you are, every little contract that you do, you can't do that and still do detention. you have to choose at some point between a legitimate business and what is simply the arm of state-sanctioned abuse. And that profoundly has changed the landscape. That notion which has brought back the power into our communities is what's changed. And so now, this company, which I probably shouldn't say this because will definitely get me sued, but you know, very often as activists I think it's hard to work out when it's working. You know, most of you, I'm sure, looking at the faces in this room, have worked on causes for years. And it must seem like you go backwards far more than you go forwards. But last week, the company transferred, which is now called Broad Spectrum actually, because even the founding family doesn't want to be associated with their name. They had a takeover bid. And it was the same company that did the takeover bid when we first started looking at this. And the takeover bid a year ago, when the campaign had just started, was $1 billion. And the takeover bid, 11 months later, is $715 million, which is a difference of $285 million. So I think, and thanks to all of you, I think the overriding thing for me, the takeaway here, and it's by no means over, because at the end of the day, whilst we may have cost the money, there are still 2,000 people in detention, and until there's not a single soul left in there, this doesn't end. But I think what it shows us is we still have a responsibility when the state is against you and when the majority is against you. There is still a way to reclaim power and to reclaim genuine discussions and to have faith that the community will come with you. And I think that has impact. And if anything, that's my overriding takeaway, that sometimes you struggle on things for years, and I have. I mean, I have an adopted brother from detention, and that was from 15 years ago, and I swore, I mean, we swore, Daniel and I were here together, as we reached that point of 2 o'clock in the morning reading that report that's the same report from 10 years earlier. Think again, think smarter, and we will find a way. Because we have to shape these systems in whatever non-violent, democratic way we can. And hopefully this is doing that. So thank you.